Thank you so much for tuning in. I'd like to call Ritik to introduce Hardik and start this event.
So, hello and good evening to one all present over here. Welcome to the day 3 of Android Study Jams powered by Google Developer Student Club. Myself, Ritek Ronak, and I am the facilitator for this program, and I am hosting Android Study Jams in our college. Today, we have Hardik Veya with us. He's an app developer at Headout and TechBurner. So, today he would be talking more about the steps involved in the app development process. So, I would request Hardik Veya to guide us through the development process. Sorry.
Hello everyone. So thank you Ritik for introducing me. I'll in today's session, what we'll go through is two questions which many people were asking on the group. So that is something, and after that, what I'll be talking about is the whole like mindset or as to which you should be taking care of while developing any project or any particular even like Android application. So, and also we do have an announcement for everyone regarding the deadline of this program, accordingly like completion of the tracks for getting a certificate. So, but for that, I'll ask everyone to stick around. So I'll share those information after a while. Right. So let's begin with, I'll close off my camera. Yeah. So first things first, what are study jams? I pretty sure like at this point everyone knows, but just to reiterate, Android study jams are community organized study groups for people who are present to do hands-on learning for Android app development. And Android Basics is a series of sessions focused specifically on learning how to build Android applications without any prior experience. And accordingly, we have Android basics and the curriculum. All the links are present. This is the certificate which you would be getting. And let's proceed off with today's objectives. So there are three things which I'll be covering, as I said. So the first thing is going to be view binding. A lot of you asked about what view binding is and how we should be using in our projects. Second is going to be a bit of a small primer on unit test and instrument test in Android application. And the third thing, which is the main agenda for today, is going to be the thought process around developing applications or any software. So let's begin with the first objective, that is going to be view binding. So right here, I'll actually increase the font size so it is a bit more readable for everyone. Right, so I hope that is much better. So first things first, as to what is view binding and why are we going to use it. So right here in front of me is the Hello World project, which I just created in using Android Studio, and I just named it view binding demo. So right here, if you'll notice, I have my constraint layout, which is having the default text view, which says Hello World, and I have wait. Yeah, so I have my main activity.kt file that is containing the very simple Android code to display the layout. So I'll quickly show this so that everyone gets on the same page. I'll connect my device. Yep, so just a second. And I'll run it through Android Studio. Yep, so now it has started compiling. And in the meanwhile, I'll also share my phone screen. So this is my device and hopefully it should compile soon. Yep, so it is now going to launch the application. So let's see. So this is the very basic application which Android Studio gave us. So it just has a very basic layout, that is the activity, and the layout contains hello world inside it. So let's see. So let's take up a situation or a problem statement where we want to update this particular text through our Kotlin code, right? So that is, we need to write some lines here that through which we'll change this hello world text to something else entirely. So let's see as to how we'll do it. So first of all, since we need to make use of this resource, we need to attach some ID to it. So I'll write text underscore main. That is good enough for us. Then inside a main activity, I'll start writing code through which I'll first of all get a reference for my text view, that is this text underscore main one, and accordingly I'll write a couple of lines of code through which we'll be able to update the text. And I'm hope like most of you would already be knowing as to how we'll do this, since this is a very basic task that has been done through the track. So I'll just write the code accordingly. So I'll write val text view, or I'll write val hello text view. Then that would be equal to find view main by ID. I'll need to set the type text view r dot id dot text underscore main. I'll fix the import, and yep. So through this line, we'll get a very simple reference to the text view that is present here. And after that, I'll write hello text view dot text equal to let's write hello Android. Yep. So now I'll run this once again. So let's see what happens. And accordingly, if you'll notice, the text is now changed to hello Android. So okay, so this is like very basic. I guess like almost everyone knows how to do it, but the main thing is to understand as to how these two lines actually work behind the scenes. So in your activity underscore main.xml, if you will see the code, I'll just switch to the code part. Right. So if you'll see the code, this file structure is actually somewhat related to a tree. This is actually a tree. So like no problem if you do not know as to what tree is in data structures, you'll soon be learning about it. But to put it in a very basic format, if you will notice, we have a constraint layout that is at the topmost part, and inside the constraint layout, we have a text view. So this can be supposed as a root, and this can be regarded as a child, right? So text view is inside the constraint layout. So constraint layout is the root or the parent, and the text view is the child, right? So what happens is that when we run this code, like basically when this particular code gets called, this particular method gets called, this line is executed. And this set content view method basically loads up our XML and displays it on screen. So for example, if I'll comment this out, right, and now if I'll try to run it, let's see what happens. Now if you see, like it basically crashed the application. Like since we are not going to show anything on screen, it would basically crash and like not display anything. So this line is a bit important for us, because this line is essentially taking up our layout. This is taking up all of this XML code, and this is inflating it. So in Android, the technical term inflating means to basically load up your XML file and like load your XML file in memory. Right. So this is the textual file. This has the parent constraint layout. This has a child text view. So by inflating, we are basically creating instances of constraint layout and instances of text view inside the memory. Right. So the set content view method does exactly that. We tell it as to what layout we need to show. We tell it this particular ID, and it would accordingly inflate our constraint layout and the text view, as I just said. Then secondly, now once we have loaded our layout, the main problem arises, that is that we need to get a reference to the text view that is present here. That is this particular one. I'll zoom it in a bit. Right. So this particular text view we need to get a reference of. So for that, Android supports a function that is called find view by ID. Right. So what find view by ID does is that it takes a reference to whatever ID we have, and it would basically find that particular that particular view from all of the memory of our activity, and it would get a reference to that memory in our hello text view variable. Right. So after that, we are basically free to do whatever we want to with our text view. Like for example, I updated its text. You can accordingly like change its other properties, like make it invisible, increase its size, decrease its size, or whatever you want to do with it. Right. So like this is all fine. Like Android has been doing it since the beginning, and this has realistically never been a major problem. But we need to understand as to why this is not very intuitive now. Because consider a situation where you have like 50 different views inside your XML. Like right now, we just have two, like one is constraint layout and one is text view. But let's say you are developing a very complex application, right? And you just keep on adding like a text view, a button, image view, recycler, whatever. Like you keep on adding views on top of each other. And say, for example, you have like 50 views in your XML, and after that you load up your XML in memory, and then you ask your application to start finding every individual view from like the entire memory space. So that is going to consume resources, that is going to take time, and that is honestly going to slow down your application. Like initially, if you run your application, I'll show you, there is like a small startup time, right? Like since this is a very lightweight application, this realistically has nothing in it. It just like loads up in a snap. But let's say you have like 50 different layouts again, it would take a lot of time to first of all load them, and then individually if you want to make use of like 20 different views from that 50 layouts, you will need to start writing like find view by id this, find view by id that, like 20 different times, and that would essentially slow down your application, because every time your app or the operating system is searching for that particular view from entire memory space that is allocated to their application. So, in order to solve that, Google introduced a concept called view binding, and that basically works by all like before even compiling, it basically allocates the ID to a particular view. I'll show you as to how it works. So first of all, in order to enable view binding, you will need to open the build.gradle file that is present for your app module. So if you'll notice, I have two Gradle files. One is project viewbinding underscore demo, and the second one is module viewbinding underscore demo.app. So I need to open view binding for the module, sorry, build.gradle file for the module. I'll write view binding, and inside it I'll write enable true. And once I've written that, I'll just press sync now button, and that would enable view binding for a project, right? So what view binding does is that it actually generates a class for every single layout, and in that particular class it already has all of the different IDs which we might be requiring to make use of through our activity. So for example, like initially, if we would be using find view by ID to find the reference memory through our ID, view binding class would automatically do it for us before we even start our application. Like even when like at the time when we are going to compile our application, it would do all of that stuff for us, so that the part of like searching and loading up the XML is totally eliminated. So I'll show you as to how it works. So for that, we need to write private late init var binding. So binding is going to be the name of a variable, and for specifying the type, I'll write the name for the class binding class that is generated for this particular XML file. And for every layout file, as I said, it would generate an XML file, and there is actually a pattern for naming the class that is generated. So for example, I have activity underscore main.xml, or essentially the name of the file is activity underscore main. Android Studio would generate the class as activity main binding, right? So again, for example, if let's say you have a layout called item underscore view underscore layout dot xml, the class generated by Android Studio would be item view layout. Then again, for another example, let's say you have activity underscore wallpaper underscore apply dot xml. Android Studio would generate the binding class with activity apply wallpaper dot binding, activity apply wallpaper binding, right? So that is how the naming scheme for the classes work. And late init, for those of you who might be not be knowing, is a way of specifying the Kotlin compiler that we'll be allocating value to this variable at some point, right? So for example, in Java or C++ or in any other major programming languages, we might be writing something like a private like activity main binding equal to null. But since and we actually specify null because at that point of time we are not sure as to what the value is going to be. But since in Kotlin we assume that anything is not null by default, we need to still have a way to tell the compiler that okay, we'll be setting up the value for the variable at some later point. So for that we use the keyword late in it. So essentially, we are creating a private variable called binding, and that is of the type activity main binding. That is a binding class generated by Android Studio, and we are telling the compiler that we'll be initializing or setting up its value at some later point. So in order to load up the binding variable, we'll need to write binding equal to, and after that I'll specify the name of the class, that is going to be activity main binding, and then I'll write dot inflate. So as I said, inflation in Android is the process of loading up a layout in memory. So since every activity is essentially like tied up to a particular layout, right? So by specifying activity main binding dot inflate, we are going to inflate this particular layout in this particular binding variable. And right here, this line is would be written irrespective of what activity you are in. So like if at this point if I just wanted to load like another layout, say for example activity underscore wallpaper or like item underscore apply dot xml. So I would have written item apply binding dot inflate because at this point, like I would say at this particular line, this is still not tied in with our activity as of yet, and we'll do that in this particular line. So right here, just to ensure, I'll write layout inflator, and this layout inflator is provided to us by the activity itself. So we need not worry about it. So by writing binding equal to activity main binding dot inflate, I get a reference of this entire layout in this particular variable. So that would make it much easier for me to access all of my views, access whatever layout is present inside it. So now, in order to actually display whatever layout is inside this variable, I'll replace this line with something like binding dot root. So essentially, by writing binding dot root, I'm telling my activity or the operating system or the application to display the parent layout of this particular binding variable. So that would be our constraint layout. So it would just display our constraint layout right here. And even this much code, if I'll run, I'll show you. So right here, this was the old application, and restarting, and even this much code is going to like essentially display the same thing, because we even though we like took a different route, we were doing essentially the same thing, that is of loading up the layout in memory and displaying it. So once that is done, let's start by modifying this particular part right here. So I'll delete this line in its whole entirety because we do not have any use for it as of now. So now you will ask as to how will be we be using the actual text underscore main part. So that is going to be accessible to us by writing binding, that is our variable dot text main, and this text main variable is our text user. So right here, I could just write tag dot text equal to hello and write and remove this particular line. That is going to give us the same result. Now, even this, if you would have noticed, is having a naming pattern. So since inside our layout, we had text underscore main, so the variable name was generated as text main. So if I would change this to something like text underscore main underscore test, my variable would then is going to be text main test. So like accordingly, you can just access whatever views are present inside your layout. Right. So essentially, and once again, I'll run this application and let's see what happens. And now it is saying hello Android. So let's add a bit of complexity here. So instead of having a text view, I'll delete this and I'll add a button to it. So I'll drag a button here. I'll place it at center. Let's constrain it. And I set it. I let the text to be button itself, and I'll change the ID to button underscore test, right? And so let's see. So let's define an action for this button. Remove this line since we don't need it anymore. So let's access our button here, binding dot button test. Like accordingly, my button is now showing up here, and my text view is gone since we deleted it. So button test dot, and for specifying an action for any particular button, we need to write set on click listener, and inside it, let's show a small toast message. So I'll write application context, hello world, toast dot length short dot show. Right, and now I'll run this. Let's see what happens. Yep, so we have our button here in our layout, and on clicking it, it is giving us a toast as hello world. So this was how we make use of view binding in our project, and also a little bit on the significance of using view binding. So again, view binding is much better than using find view by ID in your projects, and it essentially would decrease the overall loading process. It would reduce time that was originally being wasted on searching and loading up the views, and it would help you write much cleaner code because you don't need to write like find you by ID multiple times in order just to get reference for your buttons and text views. So that was on view binding. Let's see if anyone has any questions. Okay, so no questions yet. I'll take like a small. Oh, sorry, this was the one. Can we say that when a particular established app is updated for faster startup of the app, they tried view binding? Yep, this is actually happened. Like I was working with the team. They were initially using like find view by ID in their application, and I wouldn't say that the application was necessarily slow, but still, like changing up and using up view binding and data binding, it improved like it gave us a noticeable difference on the lower end devices, especially because like on the mid range and the higher end devices there wasn't really much change, but on the lower end devices that really like changed up quite a few things. So that was how it really helped us. So I don't really see any questions right here, so I'll move on and let's talk about testing. So the second thing that we need to talk about is testing. So I have two links open here. So first of all, let me actually define as to what a test is. So in your application, you'll be like writing some form of logic for doing some task, right? So for that, you will be creating different classes, you'll be creating different functions, you will be writing like a bunch of different code for whatever specific action you will be performing. Now, oftentimes you will need to ensure that whatever function you are writing is going to perform like well under different scenarios. Let's say you have a function that is taking two values, a and b, and you need to ensure that those like the output that the function is going to give using those two values is like what is expected. Like it is not getting bugged out or giving us like output that we would not really want. So for that, there is the concept of testing. So by writing specific programmed test cases, we can actually test different forms of logic in our application, and not even in like Android applications. Testing is a very generalized concept. Like almost every form of development has some form of programmatic testing involved. So, but Android has like two major types of testing. One is called like a unit test, and the second is called instrumented test. So I'll quickly show the code because like testing, I would say, is not really important for anyone at who is at the beginner level. So I just quickly show and explain the code that is present here. So say for example, you have your class that is email validator, and it is going to have a function called isValidEmail. And since this is like basically a small logic that is going to be written up in Kotlin, and it is not going to require any form of Android library or any Android dependency. So this is something which can be easily run even without like in any Android device. So since the logic is free of any Android specific dependency or any Android specific platform call. So for such cases, you can write local tests. So local tests. So basically, you'll have your class that is going to be for the test you are going to write. You'll create a function and annotate it with the text that is @text. So that would tell Android Studio that this is a testing function. And so supposedly, like your validator class is having a function is valid email, and it is going to take some string value, and accordingly it would return true or false based on our input value, right? So you can write assert statements. So like this assert true would check if the value returned by this particular method call is going to be true or not. And since name@email.com is going to be a valid email, this should be returning true. But in any situation, let's say you have some fault in your logic, or you made some error in typing, or like for any reason you manage to like mess up the logic, and your function is like returning false for this particular value. The assert true statement would basically tell you that okay, like this particular value or this particular function call is not returning true, so you should like go ahead and see as to what changes you need to make it. So this is how your testing works, and especially unit testing works. Since your unit test cases, again, as I would reiterate, is going to be more or less some basic Kotlin code or Kotlin language that is going to be free from Android dependencies. You can directly run this in your Android Studio framework itself. So like I even have a small demo of it. Let me load it up, that I created using the library itself. Let me move it right here. Yep. So where is it? Right. So this was the class. So this was the email validator class. So right here, I just wrote a single line logic that if the email would contain @, it would return true. And now, like obviously, this is flawed logic, and this should not be returning true for all cases. So this was my like validator class, which I just created in reference to this. And right here, I have my test statement. So this is the email validator test part. Right. So let's see as to what happens. So since for email validator test dot email validator dot is valid email, let me write a specific email. So like again, test@ok.com. This should give me true, right? Since this is a very valid email. And email validator test dot email validator dot is valid email. Then test ok.com, even like for our use case, this should give us false. And accordingly, let me write a third random statement is valid email test.com, or test, just like this part, or test.com. So accordingly, I'll since every single function call would return either like a true value or false value, I can start checking for it. So since for test@ok.com, it should return true. So I can write assert true and wrap this particular function call here. I'll actually go ahead and comment these lines out so we can focus on one single line at once. So let's see. So I have this particular statement here, and what I'm expecting is that my email validator.is valid email function should return true for this particular value. So I'll run this by clicking here, run, and it is going to start the the unit testing. It would like just like our application, it would compile it and run. So see, if you'll see, it is showing a green checkbox, or like the green check mark. That means our testing actually passed, and even here it is updated. But let's say I change my logic, and now I'm also checking, or like I just change it to email.contains hash, right? So I'll change my logic to some other thing now. And where is my class? Email validator class, right? So I'll run my check again. And now if you'll see, it is showing the field, because accordingly we have our flawed logic, and we tried to check if the statement would be true, but obviously it gave us a false value, since this does not contain any hashtag inside it. So it gave us false, and since our condition was that this statement should be true, it failed. The test case actually failed for us. This is like a very basic and a very generic example for unit testing works. And again, I would actually say as of right now, like you should not focus on unit testing, because first of all, you need to develop your actual like app development concepts before you can get into this. And similarly, we have testing statements for like some Android libraries, whatever they support. But for cases where we need to run actual graphical tests, we have instrumented tests, and they are pretty similar to what we saw in the local unit test cases. But accordingly, since these are going to be graphical, these would be running on a specific device or an emulator, they would work accordingly as to whatever test case you'll be writing. So that was a very basic primer on test cases and instrumented test and local unit testing. And once again, I'll say that as of right now, like local, like in an ideal world, testing is really important. Like you're writing unit test cases and instrument test cases is a great practice, but still, idealistically, you should be testing your applications physically on a variety of devices as much as you can. So, right, I guess we are at a point where I should make the announcement. So for anyone who is completing the tracks, the end date that was originally 10th January, that has been increased to 15th January. So anyone who might be having any problems, and a lot of you actually came up to us asking that that they would be having problems completing it till 10th January. We have talked to the individuals, and we have extended the deadline to 15th January. While working with the team on a project developer code. Right, I'll explain this later. Right, so as I was saying, we have the deadline increased to 15. So anyone, so we'll be rolling out a form starting from the 10th of January, and that form would be open till 15th January midnight. So anyone who manages to complete the all the tracks between 10th and 15th, they would be eligible for the certificate. So once again, happy coding. Let's see. While working with a team on a project, do developers code all the test, or some other person code the rest? So one thing which I'll tell you about testing is that not everything is actually tested from a unit testing or like test cases, because like these are actually physical pieces of software, and these are like actual applications that would be running on a variety of devices. So the like on like honestly, the best way of testing your application is to literally have a team of people who will physically install your application and test it, like test almost everything that is inside it. Because all like test cases, they really focus on testing like logic, the testing the logic part. But having like your application actually run on a physical device and doing the same thing, that is like entirely different thing. But still, while working with the team, like oftentimes the person, from what I have seen personally working with a bunch of people, whoever writes the logic part, they often also write the test cases for it, because that is how the pairing works. Because like if I'm going to write some pieces of logic, I'm the person who knows that particular function or that particular code the best. So I should be idealistically writing the test cases for it as well. So normally that is what happens. But I mean, it might be possible that some like in some company there exists some other team that is writing the test cases for everyone. So that was about for the test cases part. So once again, let's see if we have any questions. Extending the Yep, that was actually very necessary because of all of the mix of timelines we are having, like even the exams and our college and sessions and everything. So I hope that works out for everyone and we get many more people to complete the tracks. Let's see if there was any particular doubt. Nope. Great. So I'll move ahead with the main thing that I really wanted to talk about. So and that is regarding your project plan. So like as of right now, even though you are beginning with the app development, and like sooner or later you will be done with app development at a point, because like as of right now, even though you are just getting started with the basics, once you start, practicing it, getting hang of it, getting like major experience developing Android application, after a point, app development and all of this concept would basically be a tool for you. It's like a tool for you to develop according to an idea which you might be having. And honestly, the same would be regarding like even web development. Like if you practice web development for a while, you will have enough knowledge about web development that you would be able to like design and develop any sort of project that you want to. So accordingly, the main important thing at that point would be as to how you would structure your approach in order to develop your projects. So it is like a 5 to 6 step process, at least according to me, and that is what I mentioned in these slides. Let's go through them one by one. So step one, that is obviously planning. Like let's say you get an idea. The first thing which you should be ideally doing is to plan it out. See as to who like figure out what your idea is, figure out what your target audience is going to be, figure out what platform you would be using, figure out what people you are going to work with. Just plan out almost everything as you can. Like figure out all of the different variables which might be involved in the development process. Do you require it could even boil down to like, would you be able to do it? Do you even have the hardware to do it? Like some machine learning projects, they like at some point would require you to have a stronger piece of hardware than you might be having. So planning is really thinking about almost every single possible thing that might be related to your project, which you would be developing after some time. So again, just to reiterate, it is very important to plan out your projects and whatever idea you are having. Then step two is like now that you have all of your plans with yourself, you have ideated about everything. The next a major part is to list down whatever feature your app is going to have. Right. So let's say you are going to build a wallpaper application. So you would be listing down all of the different features which you might be including in your application. It could be like auto generation of wallpaper. It could be like auto changing wallpaper. Whatever feature set you come up in your mind for your application. And even at this point, I would say like just write down whatever thing you get. Even if you don't really put a lot of thought in it, just write down whatever feature comes into your mind. Then step three is to get a reality check. See as to what is possible. Right now, I just talked about like an example of a wallpaper application. So say, for example, you are going to develop a wallpaper application, and the obvious feature which it should be having is to apply wallpaper to the device, right? So on Android, it is possible. We have Android APIs to change the system wallpaper for whatever user wants to do. But on iOS, this is actually not possible. And this is something which I recently learned about. So step three is actually getting a sanity check or getting a reality check as to seeing what features are technically possible and what features aren't. So as I was saying, like in iOS, there is realistically no library or any API to update your wallpaper. The only thing which you can do is to save the image and then have it apply by yourself by going to the gallery or whatever the process is. So step three is to get reality checks on all of the features which you plan on including. Then step four is to design your application. Basically, sit with your team, or if you are going to do your project alone, sit and design out almost every single screen that might be inside your application, because having a visual reference while you are going to develop and code your application is going to help like in a much better way, just like when you would be compared when comparatively like you would not be having any visual reference. Even if you won't be like able to design the entire application from scratch, just go to like websites like dribble.com or behance.net to and see if there is like any mock-up of any application that you might be interested in. It's like, for example, if you want to develop a music application, lots of people already have created mock-ups for music applications online, so you can even reference those. But idealistically, design almost every single component and every single screen that might be included in your application that would be becoming a part of the user interface. So step four is designing. Then step five, or like 5A, is to actually set up tasks. Now, if you are working in team, have like dividing tasks between people who would be developing the project is very essential, since in that way everyone would be knowing as to what they are supposed to do, and that would help reduce ambiguity. But even if you are working alone, setting up small tasks for yourself as to like, okay, like today I'll be doing this particular thing, today I'll be doing this particular feature, today I'll be working on this particular feature or this particular option. That is actually very important because that would give you a deadline to, as I said, a personal deadline, and you would be able to carefully work through almost everything that is going to be included in the project. Then 5B is to actually start coding, because you did all of the planning, you did all of the designing, you got all of the reality checks. Now is the time you will start developing. And even though developing or like coding is like almost like the second last step, but all of the major steps that were present before, they would all really boil down to this particular development part. They would really guide you as to how you should be developing, how you would be developing, for whom you would be developing, and almost every single thing that you would have planned originally. Then once you have planned, a very important step is to get your project validated and get it tested by people, because chances are that almost every single like the first version of your application is going to have some issues on some other person's phone. So on Android, it is very common, since like Android is open source, right? So all of the different companies have like different variants of Android on the device. So like Xiaomi has MIUI, OnePlus has Oxygen OS, and like almost every single manufacturer has their own special version of Android. So it is very much possible that let's say you have a OnePlus device, you develop your application, it works great on your device, but someone who uses a like Xiaomi device or a Motorola device, they start facing some issues. So getting your project tested and validated on a variety of hardware, or just by different peoples, even in your team, or just like you can go around and run your application on your family members' phone, that is also very important. So that would give you a strong code base that, okay, like even though the platform is changing or like the hardware is changing, my application is going to work fine still. So yeah, like again, just to recap, step 1 is to plan out everything, that is planning. Step 2 is to list down all of the features. Step 3 is to see what is possible. Step 4 is to design your application or your project. Step 5 is to set up tasks and actually develop your application. And step 6 is to get your application tested or validated. So that was more or less from my side regarding the whole development cycle and the process. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask now. I'll be here.
Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask any doubts you have. We are here to answer those questions for you.
If possible, can we get a look of how does professional apps look like how big is the code?
I can show you. So I can show you the code base for the application. I'm working alone on right now. So this is let's load it up first. Right. So right now, this is the code base for the wallpaper application I'm actually developing for Tech Burner team. So like this, a bunch of libraries are involved. So I do the UI development. I write all of the code. So let's see how many classes we have. Right. So like this is almost I've been working on for like the last 2 months, I suppose. So this is work. This has been done through like the last 2 months, and accordingly, I have all of the layouts that are present inside it, and I have the different classes. For better yet, I would show you the GitHub repository for this. That would even give like much better idea. GitHub. Yeah, so this is the repository for it. Right now, this is having like 473 commits, and that has been done from like 2 to 4 months. I've been working on this project, and this has grown to what it is now. Even though the application is not very complex, the code base, as you saw, is like this much in size. And this is obviously going to increase quite a bit because I still have a lot of things to do and add to the project, and a couple of bug fixes need to be done as well. And accordingly, another apps code base which I can show is going to be the news application which I developed for them. So that would be this particular Bits application that is having like almost 50 to 100 commits, and I've worked on this for over a year at that point. So that this particular application, I don't have the code base synced, I think. Let's see. Can I open the project? Open. Oh yeah, I actually have the code base with me. So I'll show you. Right. So this was like a result of like 6 months of pure development, because Android actually updated a lot of their core library. So I actually had to create an entire new project and rebuild the entire application from scratch in like 2 to 3 months. So like this was a pain, and even this would not be really big, if I would honestly say, compared to what real applications look like. Yeah, but the number of classes are pretty huge. Wow. Yeah, so these are like, even like this application is actually using a bunch of different concepts, because there is like MVVM. So almost every single activity or fragment is going to require a repository or class and everything. So that is something like on the technical side of things. And there is like dependency injection, there's like Firebase and everything. So a lot of different things exist inside the single project, from factory classes, then even the layouts are quite a bit. So this was the Android application that I made. And accordingly, right now, I'm actually the company in which I'm interning. This is their code base. I can even show you this. So this is actually React Native. So they have a huge number of classes in React Native as well, that is JavaScript. Then they have a separate Android project, which serves as a base for the application. That has a lot of different classes. And accordingly, those are actually spread around multiple branches. So even like that is something like, if you'll see, a lot of different classes are present inside it. I can't even like expand all the class folders. So yeah, so like navigating through code bases is a problem at start, but once you will get used to it, they really work through. Yep.
How much time does it take to build like a basic application so we can publish it?
That would really depend on the type of application you are developing. I would say, like personally, I have been doing proper Android app development for like 3 years. I started in 11th, but I really like started understanding the basics and like the core part from first year. So developing my first application, like even developing this particular like news application, that took me about 5 months, I would say. 5 months, like starting from scratch, figuring out the design, figuring out and accordingly there was a person who was working on the back end. He was developing the API. So he took a month to just set up a basic API so that I can get started with the application. So overall, I would say it took like 6 months with a team of 2 people to develop the entire application from scratch and launch it to on the Play Store.
Okay, thank you, Bhaiya.
Yeah. Yep. So any other question?
Do we have any other questions regarding to the program, or Android in general, or university in general? Feel free to ask them.
Yeah, like
Yes, Ashish. From where I can get the recording of this lecture?
we'll share it on the WhatsApp group after we are done with it. Like as soon as the recording is made available to us, we'll share it on the WhatsApp group.
Alright, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Is there any
Is
particular
the date extended? I was not able to for a week.
Regarding the date, yes, we actually have the date extended. Now the date would be 15 January, since initially it was 10 January, right? So now we'll be floating the forms around on 10th of January. So anyone who fills up the form between 10th and 15th January, they will be able to get the certificate once we have verified their profiles.
Right. Thank you.
Are there any like any features for Android Studio like which we can create animations, not like basic, or do we create in any other software and then import it?
Like according to the animation, you would be going through like almost like all of those options are actually valid, because so for example, if you just want to have a very basic animation, like let's say you just want to have a spinning text in your application, so that is achievable through code. You don't really have to do anything with it. But let's say you want to have a very great motion graphic. So for example, you have your Outlook application, right? So Outlook has nice animations when you are setting up the application, setting up your account. So those animations are actually made in what is it software? Uh, Adobe Reader, After Effects. Yeah. So those applications are actually developed in Adobe After Effects, and there is a library called Lottie. So Lottie is an library by Airbnb, as far as I remember, and they really help you export the animations and add it to your Android application. And even I'll share the link to this website here. So even they offer you free resources which you can make use of. So for example, if I go to free animation section, so all of these free animations you can add in your application. So say for example, you need this cloud animation in your application, you can add it. You need this particular visual animation, you can add it. So these animations are free for you, and you can accordingly add it using the Lottie library. And if you know Adobe After Effects, you can develop your own animation. And sometimes what can happen is that you can even find animations through GitHub dependencies, or like Android dependencies, if I were to say exactly. So for example, if I need loading animation Android, let me search specifically. So I can just like see, if you'll notice that even like different libraries have different forms of library animations which you might be requiring. So there is like really no specific way to get animations in your project. Whatever way works out for you, that is realistically the best way possible.
Oh,
Yeah. Anything else which anyone might be interested in, or like just wanted to ask? To make complex apps, what all languages or tools are required? Is Kotlin useful in making such apps, or we use Java for it? So Kotlin is, even if you like don't know Java, Kotlin is actually the de facto standard as of now. All of the applications which I have developed has been done in like 100% Kotlin. So all of this code which you are seeing, this has been written from Kotlin. And I don't think I've used Java for like last 2 years since once I've made the switch to create any form of Android application. So yeah, like Kotlin is definitely the way forward for creating Android applications. And not even Android applications, you can develop like small projects for it. So if I would show you, I even made my third semester project. We'll be having like not third semester but fourth semester. So in fourth semester, you will be having a subject called a database management system. So all about like 95% chances that the teacher is going to ask you to make a project. So I use Kotlin to make my database project as well. So let me see RDBMS. Yeah. So I made a small backend, or like a small web service using Kotlin, which was making use of MySQL to essentially work as like an notes application and help in managing your notes. So as I said, I use Kotlin to just to develop that, because I know Kotlin very well, and I thought that if like why spend time learning a new thing if I could just like get done with the project as soon as possible by using Kotlin. So yeah, so that was also where I applied Kotlin to develop. And
Where, what do you think
yeah,
about Kotlin cross-platform? Like, is it evolving or not?
like cross-platform is really a mixed bag for me, at least in my opinion, because cross-platform frameworks are really dependent on the companies that develop them. I would say, Flutter is essentially the best cross-platform framework as of right now. And similarly, React Native is also there. But Kotlin multi-platform is really not in like a usable state. I even tried. Let me show you. I think I have a project which I made with a friend of mine, Dalab, maybe it was.
Okay, and a
Uh,
fun fact, Hardik
yeah.
actually hates Flutter a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah. Because like I don't know, because in the same file you have the Dart code for the your layout, for your function, for your API calls. Like why? I mean, like Android, like Kotlin has a very decent separation. Like we have our layouts in a nice XML. We have our code in like proper Kotlin files, and we can just use whatever layout we want. But then like why do we need to have everything inside a single file then? So that is my like thing against Flutter. So I'll show you this. So this was our fifth semester like small project. Like you will be having a subject called DA, that would be design and analysis of algorithm. So I thought that like our idea was very simple. We just had to pick a candidate from like a bunch of candidates. The comparison was very simple. So I thought like why not use this opportunity to learn a different thing. So I started with the Kotlin multi-platform, and honestly, it's not really worth it. It uses Compose, and it has no support as of right now. Even like having multiple screens, that was something I had to figure out on my own, because officially they don't have any support for it. So no, Kotlin multi-platform right now, no. It might be improving, but it is still far from being properly usable. Yeah.
Okay.
I yeah. No hate to Flutter though. I mean, if you like Flutter and cross-platform, feel free to learn it as well. But I certainly won't.
And React Native,
okay.
is it better than Flutter?
In my personal opinion, at least in a bit, because in React Native, I'll just show you. I even have a React Native project open. So in React Native, at least the layout part is being done in like proper HTML. So even though the code is in the same part, you get a bit of separation, because your code, like your UI code, is going to be almost at 90% of cases at the bottom of the function, and it would be in HTML. So it is a bit better to understand and like just scroll around in files. And all of your logic part would be in TypeScript or JavaScript, which would be separate from obviously your HTML. So at least just like getting started with it and learning it is a bit better. I would say React Native is a bit better in that opinion. But realistically, if you really want the best application that you can make, like native is the way to go. Like if you have the resources, have two separate teams, one to develop for Android in Kotlin and one to develop for iOS in Swift. That is subpar to nothing. Obviously, like React Native and Flutter are great, but idealistically, native applications are much better.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Then again,
Um,
if anyone has, yeah.
so do we have any other doubts? Okay, I think we should wrap up the session then, Hardik.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Hardik, for guiding us through your thought process of making an Android app. And we really appreciate, and I think it was a very insightful session. And I hope you guys got to learn a lot. So looking forward to your projects, whatever Android applications you make. Feel free to share share it with us, so that we can guide you and we can help you out for future developments. And thanks for attending this session. And we'll be back with much more amazing sessions in the future. So we'll just end the session now. Thank you.
Also, I just want to reiterate, if anyone faces any problem regarding anything, be it like app development, like right now, since almost everyone is doing app development, so most of you would be facing problems in it. But even in future, if you face any issues in like anything, like be it like web development or Python, JavaScript, whatever language or issue you are facing, feel free to contact anyone in the GDSA groups which we have created. Almost everyone that is who is a part of Android Study Jams is also part of our GDSA club, and we have like most likely we have added everyone to all the groups. If we by chance missed anyone, feel free to contact us. But yeah, just again to reiterate, feel free to ask any doubts or share any problems which you might be having. If you think you cannot share your problem on group, or even if you might be having any personal problems, feel free to DM any of us. Like almost everyone would have faced any problem which you might be happening, and especially once the hostels would reopen. So feel free to share anything which you might be having.
With that being said, let's just wrap up this session. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for taking the session.